going to talk about Mo Salah and how he still has a big role to play at Anfield. I want to start with the aftermath of his quotes.
It does end up, I think, reflecting genuinely well on everyone, and I include Salah in that. Salah doesn't come back, himself being defensive, feeling as though he's got to stop at another mix zone, or, you know, he's got anything to prove or say himself after what he's gone through with Egypt. So I think it does reflect on Liverpool as a workplace, that there is a lot of maturity there. And I think that is a positive massively.
You can talk about quality of player, you can talk about longevity and time they've been there, but for me, he's a player who transformed us from being happy to get in the Champions League, which I was for a period of time, to literally giving us the best day of our lives.
And I was just looking at Mo, and he was clapping, and I was looking at him thinking, this cannot be the last time I am clapping you. And I was genuinely terrified. And I can say that, and people can laugh, but I was like, I just want him to be, I'm giving you a clap because I'm off to the AFCON and I'll be back in a month. And I really wanted to be that. And I'm so glad it has been that.
Massive moments, huge historic things that have happened, growth of the club, longevity, where he is on the records list. He is a Liverpool player. This is his club, and that happens. It's as much his club as it's Steven Gerrard's.
Today's TAW Unwrapped is once again brought to you by our friends at Aura Frames. Mother Day is hard, innit? What to get for the woman who gave you life? We screamed to the heavens. Well, Aura Frames have answered our prayers. Why not get a lovely digital photo frame modelled by my special assistant Neil here in front of us. You can upload an unlimited number of photos and keep adding anytime, anywhere through the app. A lovely gift box included as well. So if you'd like to get yourself the Carver mat frame, which you see here from Aura Frames, you can get £35 off with the code TAW at checkout, auraframes.co.uk, code TAW at checkout. And it is TAW Unwrapped. I'm Josh Sexton, joined today by Neil Atkinson, Paul Johnson and Andy Bell. The teachers are off. We've got a teacher special today, I'm excited about it. Are you
You're all half-term booking. Well, I don't know about term time's not worth knowing, Josh.
It was one of my favourite things of being the former booker of the Anfield Wrap was going fucking sick with the teachers.
Oh, yeah. Basically don't get the week off. They're in here every day. May as well set up with the whiteboards upstairs and do some lessons in the gaps.
You booked me this 3 or 4 weeks ago. I thought, God, Neil's on top of the half terms.
Oh, yes. Yeah, 100%.
Well, I hope we can learn some valuable lessons today. We're going to talk about Mo Salah and how he still has a big role to play at Anfield. We did a show on Mo Salah a little while back off the back of his Ellen Road outburst, so I kind of wanted to come a little bit full circle on this, assess his current situation and his future from a few different angles. So I do want to start with a bit of a disclaimer, because discussing Mo Salah can become fraught because he means so much to a lot of people, as my voice is going. But I want to caveat this to say we all love the person, the player, and his historic and ongoing contributions to Liverpool Football Club. But most of all, we love Liverpool Football Club. So I want to attack this from a few different angles, gents. I want to start with the aftermath of his quotes, because it's fair to say, Neil, that both Salah and the club have dealt with this, at least diplomatically, but at most professionally since sort of everything happened, really.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that sort of came out post, which was the players were a bit like, oh, he's done one of them, has he? Like, not even that they were that angry or anything, but the players were almost a bit like, yeah, well, he's...
An eye roll.
Yeah, but also they're all his mates and they hang around with him. You know, you get to see that Szoboszlai's messing with him in the training photos the next day, and that there's a level of friendliness. Alisson does the thing where he says, well, I'll speak to him when we get back. European, that's almost the sternest public word that comes out from a player. But I think they all understand him and they all understand his contribution. They understand that what drives him is part of what drove all of us to a league title. So I think that they were able to sort of work their way around it. And then I think it speaks volumes for the manager's professionalism. And also, whilst there's been a lot of chat, I think, externally about the manager and his role at Liverpool, I think it actually speaks to the fact that the manager felt like he had an enormous amount of internal support, that he didn't feel the need to be unbelievably defensive in the aftermath of it. Said it'll be an internal matter. When he comes back, we'll address it. He'll be back playing for us and being part of the group. And that's just sort of how it played out. I think if the manager's position had been as vulnerable as maybe people perceived it to be when Mo made the comments that he made, then the manager may well have ended up acting a little with greater concern. I think if the manager's position was as vulnerable again as I think we perceived it to be in the January, then I think again when Salah comes back, he might have felt like he had something to prove in terms of how he was going to manage the player. That idea of wanting to be quite dictatorial. But I also just don't think he's that sort of manager. I think he does see himself as someone who is, ironically with the two teachers here, who is here to teach and develop and coach and work with the player, work with the person. And as part of that, as happens in any sort of organisation from time to time, you do get circumstances that are difficult. But if you're able to say, well, we're all on the same page, we all want the same things, which, I think that Mo Salah does want. I think Mo Salah wants Liverpool to be successful. I think he understands that for Liverpool to be successful is part of Mo Salah being successful whilst he plays for Liverpool. So I think that everyone, it does end up, I think reflecting genuinely well on everyone, and I include Salah in that. Salah doesn't come back himself being defensive, feeling as though he's got to stop at another mix zone, or, he's got anything to prove or say himself after what he's gone through with Egypt. So I think it does reflect on Liverpool as a workplace, that there is a lot of maturity there. And I think that is a positive massively. But I do also think that obviously there's still ongoing give and take around all of this, given where Salah finds himself. So I don't think it is remarkably straightforward at this stage. And I think that there's still a lot of legitimate discussion to have around Salah. But I think in terms of player, teammates, club as a whole, I think if you think about where we were in the immediate aftermath of that Leeds game and where we are now, I think you can just sort of say that everyone's come out of it well. And as I say, I think all of those groups, that's true of.
Yeah, and I think that, like Neil mentions there, Paul, it was a time of really heightened emotions from sort of all sides, really, and I think it's clear that Salah is a part of those heightened emotions at the time as well. And one of the sort of reactions, I guess, that we had as fans, possibly in our own emotions, was wondering whether it sort of sped up a timeline towards Mo Salah's exit from Liverpool. And I kind of wonder whether that was always, whether there was always a plan from Liverpool's point of view, but whether Mo Salah maybe wasn't abreast of the sort of plans, and that's where he felt a little bit like left out and let down.
Yeah, and I think when he came out and said what he did, the initial thought from myself was, like, obviously I was devastated, because I thought, there was a lot of talk around him going in January and literally maybe going off to the African Cup of Nations and then never coming back. And I generally would have been devastated, and I think that probably most of the fan base would have felt the same. So when he did come out and say what he did, it was like Neil said, it was, oh no, we weren't in a good place at the time as a club in terms of results, etc. on the pitch. There was question marks about performances and everything else. So it was almost like a lot of people's feelings were, well, why say it now, Mo? But like Neil alluded to, it's Mo and Liverpool being successful have been a huge, it's been hand in hand. So when he felt like he had to do that, whether it was the right thing to do or not, Josh, everyone says, keep things behind closed doors. He didn't. He came out and said it. It kind of was a little bit of not a shock to us all, because you know what Mo's like. We know he's done it in the past with his contract, etc. But it was that whole, we probably don't need this right now. And I think as a fan base, we all probably felt that. He was then obviously over-criticised by maybe some, in my opinion. But you can see why people like that, because they, as you said earlier, your first line in, we love the club more than anyone. But Mo's been such a big part of it. I didn't want it to go just down this sort of, finishing in a bad light. So I think what Neil said, I think everyone has come out of it quite well. The way they've all dealt with it, it does seem like it's passed. And I think maybe injuries have helped, because if we had a fully fit squad and Mo maybe isn't playing at the level we know he can, there might have been more talk that we mightn't be playing again, and that would then make more decisions. But because of the way it is now, it's almost like, well, yeah, he's playing because he's our first choice, and at the moment there isn't no one else who can kind of step into his position. So I think that has helped as well. But I am grateful, and I'm sure, like Neil said, most of the fan base will be grateful the way it has just sort of come back and quite seamlessly into, okay, we're all back on the same page, and obviously results have picked up, etc. So that's where I'm feeling at the moment.
It's kind of one of the funny things I'll come back to in this, Paul, isn't it? Because there's a sort of simultaneous balancing act here where we don't want the football players to necessarily be like robots and come out with a media trained answer every time, but we also do want the club to sort of, protect their own interests. And that's why I say at the start that we all love Liverpool Football Club. Ultimately is that idea that we don't want Mo Salah to be coming off and sort of throwing his manager under the bus or any of his teammates, but we also do want the honest truth every now and again.
Yeah, and it's that fine line, isn't it, between what you want, because like you said there, there's so many of the lads come out and it is the media trained answers, etc. We know how passionate and we know how driven Mo is, and I think that's why he did it. You know, when people were looking into it, I understand why, and we're saying, oh, his agents had something to do with it. I think he is an emotive player, and he often, you know, he is on the pitch. You can see if he's having a bad game, it looks like it's really getting to him. There are other players who it looks like it doesn't, you know, not in our team, but you can tell, you know, it doesn't mean as much to. So when he came out and said it, you know, although I think most of the fans were, oh no, because you just knew what would happen. Mo Salah is a huge story for any, you know, Whale press. So again, we knew it was going to be in the papers. And I think you mentioned the throwing under the bus. It was such a big line, you know, to say that, you know, he felt like that. And whether that was the right word to use, he is emotive. He has come out. He hasn't been robotic. He's come out and he said, I'm going to use this opportunity. And as I say, I think, you know, fortunately where we are now, I think it's all it's quite got to a point where we're all quite happy at the moment.
Yeah, I think the confusing thing, sort of at the time for me, Andy, and I guess still now, is that, like, it felt to me as though it was always a temporary measure, like Mo being out of the team, and that's where I kind of almost wanted him to be more patient, really, like with the club and with everything that was going on at the time. And like, you look back on it now, and that's kind of been the case as well, really. Like, it has just been a temporary measure.
Well, it has, and everyone said around it, it's the fact that Mo obviously doesn't necessarily do the work defensively, mostly because he's not asked to do it, not sort of from a personal point of view. But that was around the time. I mean, the 3-3 at Leeds, we were shipping goals left, right and centre, 4-2 PSV, 3 to Nottingham Forest. I'm not sure where they all tie in chronologically, but the point was he needed to make us more solid, and taking Salah out of the side and putting Szoboszlai on the right in his position did do that. It's not to say that that was the only way of doing that. Obviously, since he's come back, we've slowly tried to revert back to being a little bit more expansive and playing a little bit more football. And obviously, you see the performance as we record on Saturday against Brighton, where, you know, we are very, very free flowing and playing some lovely stuff. So I think it was just tied in with that, really. And in terms of actually how it fell around the time of the Leeds game, obviously it was a week before he was going to the African Cup of Nations. He gets punished in that he doesn't travel to Inter Milan. And I don't think Brighton can go any better for anyone involved, because he's brought back into the team. He's obviously not, he's brought back onto the bench, so the manager isn't losing face in putting him straight back in the starting lineup and feeling that Mo had won in any way, shape or form. There's an injury to Joe Gomez 20 minutes in, which means the obvious thing to do is put Szoboszlai back to right back and Salah on the pitch. And Salah has a great performance and he goes away to the African Cup of Nations. So I think everyone in the ground was really happy with how that transpired, apart from me, who had Szoboszlai any time. So not only did he go to right back, but the first choice penalty taker was on the pitch as well. So I wasn't happy, but everyone else was. And obviously, let's say that isn't the case, and let's say he's kept out of the team for Brighton, or even if he just gets 10 minutes at the end. I think for the whole of the next month, for which Salah's away at the African Cup of Nations, that's a story. What happens when he comes back? Is he coming back? Etc., etc. But he came back in, scored the goals, and then nobody was in any doubt really after AFCON, after we tightened up and sorted that side of things out. He's back in the team, and that's where he is now. And obviously, as we record, he's probably had arguably his best performance of the season, I think, on Saturday against Brighton in the FA Cup. Absolutely fantastic. Look back to himself in some ways in terms of the taking on of his man. Gets his 2 assists, gets his goal. So happy days as far as I'm concerned, and well done everyone involved, really, because that could have got into a really messy situation that didn't in the end.
Yeah, I want to discuss his role in the team now, Neil. It's fair to say that he is and has become like a crucial creative cog in the machine, really, and therefore it's no mistake that it feels like the assists are flowing for him right now.
The assists are, but I think he wants the goals to be there too, because he's that sort of player. I think there's something about this where I think Salah wants to feel as though he's contributing. I know that's almost your defining force. He's contributing to Liverpool winning. I don't think it's enough for him to get the numbers. For me, one of the defining Salah images, I always hark back to it because I think it really matters. When he won the Golden Boot in the 21-22 season, he's given it at the end of the match. He thinks during that match he scored the goal that wins Liverpool the league. And it transpires what's going on at City stops that from being the case. You know, well done to City and all that sort of stuff. Terrible for us. And when Salah gets the Golden Boot, he's in tears. And if he was a lot of the popular perception of Salah, there'd be an element of holding this up, feels great, one of those boys, tough day, but you say what you want, what about Mo Salah? That was not his attitude. His attitude was he was as heartbroken as anyone else in that ground. And I think that, but I think he feels I contribute when the ball ends up in the back of the net, whether it's through an assist or through a goal. And I think he's been, and listen, I also don't think, part of what I think we've seen this season is he was brilliant last year. But I think what we also can now see that was happening last year was the entire side was brilliant and was creating a platform for him to be to be that final thing, that final flourish. And I think he respected that. Again, think about the way he spoke up for departed teammates in the summer when other people were making glib comments and everyone was saying, oh, we'll be so much better now that X or Y has gone, and Salah publicly comes out, because I think he had a consciousness of, no, part of why I was able to be so good was the work these lads were doing. So I think that he very much, I think there is a sense of humility there, whilst he also thinks, rightly, I'm really good, because he is really good. I think what's changed a little bit is the fulcrum of the side was going that way anyway, and in his absence, it's intensified. That's Florian Wirtz. But on the flip side of that is I did trends with Josh Williams yesterday, and the player who passes the most to Florian Wirtz across the whole 90 minutes against Sunderland is Mo Salah. Mo Salah gets the ball and he goes, where's Florian Wirtz? Because what matters to Mo Salah is Liverpool are successful. That's what he wants. And then the next thing that matters is, am I contributing to that success? So I think that there is a role for him from now until the end of the campaign. I think there's another thing as well. It's no surprise to me. He keeps finishing games strongly. I think it's perfectly reasonable to say that the last couple of seasons, I will include last season, even though we were scoring all the goals and Liverpool winning a lot of the games, I think obviously his direct speed has diminished. It has diminished. But what hasn't diminished is his fitness and his stamina. So what's happening in these matches is he's coming up against fullbacks, some of whom are 10 years younger than him, who for the first 20 minutes, 30 minutes might think, I'm doing all right against this fella. Get 60 minutes in, got a bit ropey this. 60 to 90, will he stop? Why is he still going at me? Yeah. Why is he still as fast as he was on 15 minutes, whereas I'm slowing down? And the reason why, boyo, is that you are not a marathon runner like this man is. You are not a 1,500 metre man. He is. He could do a 4-minute mile, this fella. And he'd have a kick for home. And I think that's what you're seeing as well. And I think it's down to, and I think you saw that last season. Think how many times Salah scored the goal that went from 1-0 to 2-0 for Liverpool. Yeah. How many times he contributed on 70 minutes with something magical. And that is because, it's not because he was anonymous for the first 15 in quite the same way possibly, but the way the team was set up. And then suddenly, you know, Salah's growing into the game. How many second halves did you watch last season where you went, Salah's going to be a difference maker here? And then he was. And I think that's a key part of what he can be for Liverpool between now and the end of the season, which is we need to accept it is going to go through more through Wirtz. Salah is going to be at times alone in a position. At times he is going to stand his man up, especially early in games, and he's not going to come away with it. It's not going to go as well as you'd hope, but he's not going to stop. Mm-hmm. And he's not going to stop asking questions, and he's not going to stop doing the right thing. As I say, the long term on this, or the post this summer of this, is a conversation. But I think from now until the end of the season, you ask left-backs when you come off the pitch, how did you feel with your last half an hour there? I think the fair few of them are going to say, I could do without this fella, I could just do without this. And I think that's I think that's a compliment for him. While simultaneously we do have to acknowledge that if our backs are up against the wall, maybe he's not going to be able to contribute as much as we'd like, and that might put the manager in a bit of a spot from time to time. Yeah. Australia and New Zealand were coming back. Well, to Australia we're coming back, Craig. And one of my favourite things about doing the tours in the past has been going back to the same places, taking our show there, doing it differently, because the situation the Reds find themselves in, which we all accept is not ideal, but telling our stories in a completely different way, different stuff all the way through. It's been great going back to the US in the past. When we did Australia last year, so many people said, will you come back next year? We're coming back, and I can't wait to do it again, do it different and capture this moment, and also why the brilliance of getting to be a Liverpool supporter.
Yeah, so excited. I was saying on each of the shows that I hope we come back the following year and trying to wish it into existence.
And here it's existed.
And here it's happening. We're obviously going to Auckland and New Zealand for the first time, which would be brilliant, but the shows will be different. The context is different, but the laughs will be the same. And just that general sense of everyone getting in a room, because you know that, like, you know, it's difficult with the time zones to be able to do that. So yeah, I'm so excited to get back. It's going to be great.
Honestly, it's going to be absolutely brilliant. So we're across all of those nights. It is Sydney, it is Melbourne, it is Auckland, Brisbane, Adelaide and Perth. Slightly different venues in a couple of places. We're excited by that as well. It should be the absolute business. Get yourselves down if you can in Australia and in New Zealand. We cannot wait to see you.
Yeah, there's an argument, Paul, that you see his goal against Brighton and realise that there's more sort of variation that Mo can add to his game there as well, like the upper body strength, the footwork. Even if the pace has gone, as Neil says, there's still, you know, moves that Mo Salah can make to get where he needs to be, and then the perseverance to win the penalty in itself shows his mindset still.
I think going back to what you were saying, Neil, as well, about like how, you know, left backs or anyone who's up against him in the last half an hour, you've got to constantly be on your toes. You've got to, and that goal did show that. When Mo gets the ball at Anfield, the thing I say every time, go on Mo, beat him up, because as a defender, if you've got anyone running at you, it's horrible. No one likes it. And as you say, you might get young, whippersnapper left backs who for the first 20 minutes think, I'm doing well here. But that proved, listening to what Neil was saying earlier, how what you can't switch off. And again, that strength, he held off 2 players, didn't he? Cut inside. Obviously, he felt the contact, and rightly so, he's gone down, and there's a penalty. I think that's exactly what we're going to see from the latter stages of the season. He hasn't got that blistering pace anymore, where on a one-on-one he's going to blow the left back away. But because of his strength and his stamina, like Neil said, he's going to just keep going. And I think that's all we can ask of him now between now and the end of the season, because if he does that, then the assists will come and the goals will come, and again he will feel like he's contributing to the results, not just I'm playing well. What he's doing directly on the pitch is having an actual impact on our results, and hopefully that will be again, it'll give us a massive push to have a successful last few months of this campaign.
And I think part of that is trusting himself, isn't it? Like trusting that you have the upper body strength to be able to outmuscle your man, but also the footwork. Like it's something we have seen in close quarters from him, but maybe only really in like flashes down the years, whereas you see it at the weekend, like he does have that footwork.
Yes, I think sometimes as well. I mean, this is, like Neil said, one of our greatest players. When you've got the talent he's got, and he squares a man up, I think there's been times when maybe Mo, maybe a couple of years ago, or maybe Mo last season, would have gone, right, I know I've got this player here, so I can go in and beat him again. I think there was a little bit of self-doubt. I mean, and for a player who's so confident, there was times when maybe, during the whole sort of before the Leeds game, and there's times when you think old Mo would have beat him again there and gone on the outside and with one in. But I think the game on Saturday will really help him, because I think, you could see, I think he's passed records again last week, hasn't he, with the Sunderland assist, etc. There's not many more records that he hasn't broke or close to breaking. And I think that Saturday's game, and I mean the cushion ball to Szoboszlai as well, so good. His supposedly weaker right foot, he just cushioned it in.
There was loads that last season as well.
And really that link up, balls, and you mentioned before about Wirtz, and loads have been said. Obviously we lost Trent, who again him and Mo had this great combination with Szoboszlai down the right side. So that's probably been a factor again why things haven't been right this season. But I think Saturday gives him massive confidence to move on and hopefully finish off really strong. When I say finish off, I know we'll probably get onto that, but we finish this season anyway for now.
Good segue though. Appreciate it. Andy, we watched the Sunderland game together along with Neil, and Neil's already referenced that link up with Florian Wirtz. You could really see it in that game, I thought.
Yeah, you definitely could. And when we signed Wirtz, I thought that it would actually unlock Mo Salah even more. I thought he was going to do even more numbers.
I wonder if he thought that a little bit, to be honest.
Yeah, because I thought that essentially the attention around Wirtz means that they can't divert as much attention to Salah, and therefore there'd be more space for Salah, and that's what Wirtz does. He creates space for other players, and obviously we know how good he is in the ball. And then obviously Wirtz comes in and doesn't hit the ground running. And my theory on that, as I've said many times in shows, is just the physicality of the league. He's taking a little bit of time to get up to speed. He feels like he is up to speed now, and Salah is playing better as well. The numbers are all in favour of Salah post-AFCON compared to pre-AFCON. He's winning the ball back more, and he's creating more chances. He's getting more chances himself. His touches are fewer, but his touches in the opposition box are greater. So by all the metrics, Mo Salah's playing better, and we can see he's getting some goals and certainly some assists over the last couple of weeks. But I think it's interesting, Neil's point about every time Salah gets it, he's looking for Wirtz. I remember watching Argentina in the World Cup, mad sort of parallel, but Messi and McAllister were sort of the same thing. Every time Messi got it, he looked for McAllister.
I think he is very Messi-like these days, to be fair. Same like trajectory as Messi went on.
Yeah, totally. And every time Messi got it, he looked for McAllister because he was like, well, actually, the entire quality of this team isn't necessarily where it needed to be, but this guy here, I can trust him to get it back to me or make something of it. I think Salah has that same relationship with Wirtz. I definitely don't think you've seen the best of the two. And yeah, I think there will be a lot more link up between them. And as Wirtz keeps improving and continues to have more influence in games, and I think that Sunderland game you mentioned is the most influential I've seen Wirtz in a Liverpool shirt. I think that's when you'll see Mo getting back to the goals and assist numbers that we saw. Well, maybe not last season, but certainly somewhere close to it.
Do you think part of it, Neil, was the sort of, you know, the adaptation to the new moves? Like, it's been referenced on a couple of shows. I think you might have even referenced it earlier in the show about how he'd sort of tweeted his support of the old lads and how much he loved the sort of old guard, if you will, of Liverpool's front line, and maybe it would just taken him a little bit of time to kind of adapt to that and maybe even get over the mental block of it a bit.
Sort of. I think we can't look. I don't think he. Let's be clear about this. Pre when he was rested / dropped, I don't think Salah was playing very well. No. I think it's fine to say Salah wasn't playing very well in that. We've all got to be grown-ups about this. I don't think McAllister's been playing well. I don't think Konate, up until Leeds away, arguably was playing well. I think that since then he's been excellent. I think you've been pleased to see a couple of developments in McAllister. But if I keep doing this, I end up sort of naming half or 2/3 of the team, at which point you get to say Liverpool weren't playing very well. Yeah. And if you're saying Liverpool weren't playing very well, and then you're saying, and there's some new lads who are trying to integrate themselves, you know, I think we're all now absolutely all on board with Ekitike, for instance. And I'm not going to say act like Ekitike's had a bad game, because I actually don't think he particularly has, but there's been some games where he's not been as effectual. Well, that's what you expect from a young player who's coming into a new team. You know, it's took Wirtz a bit of time to genuinely be able to impact in the final third. Well, but now he is. Are Liverpool playing better? Yes. So therefore, is Mo Salah playing better? Yes. But also as part of that, is Mo Salah part of Liverpool playing better? Yes. There was a period of time there where Liverpool were not playing well at all. And also there was a period of time where Liverpool's performance within games was degrading. It wasn't strengthening as games wore on. Liverpool were dealing with adversity badly. They are bad when they are behind against Nottingham Forest. They are bad when they are behind against PSV. They are terrible after going 1-0 down and having the goal disallowed going into half-time against Manchester City. And that's not on Mo Salah, solely on Mo Salah. But Mo is one of the senior players in that group, so I'm sorry about that. If lads need to be shouted at and things have got to be better on the pitch there and then, well, Mo, come on. You are, you know, there's a bit of chat, he might be vice-captain. Everyone sees you as part of the leadership group. So when I'm looking at the Liverpool side and it's not got enough leadership, well, your name's in the frame, mate. And I mean that with the greatest love and respect. In the same way Virgil's name is in the frame, in the same way that Andy Robertson's name is in the frame. That's just the way it is. We've got to be grown-ups here. So I think it's all right to say, you know, in that period, he is one of the Liverpool players who just was not performing up to standard. But it's also worth saying, well, there was 7 or 8 of them. But if your name's Mo Salah and you've got the biggest contract and you're on the biggest wage, then also, I'm sorry about this as well, Mo, but that means that you get the biggest spotlight. That's just the truth of it. And so I think, you know, this is part of the emphasis. And also this goes for the manager. It was, you know, I think the manager, we're not that far away from saying that the managers had a good 13 weeks, say. But you can argue that the 6-7 weeks that preceded, he's not great. And you can even look at bits within that 13 weeks that we can now talk about and say, well, that if we don't get what we need to get to, which is Champions League qualification, then there's days there, and I'm thinking about the promoted sides at home, as I always am. There's days there where you need to be better at your job, Arna. Sorry, mate. You just did.
I think it's interesting, the point you make with the spotlight there, because for me, Mo Salah has quietly had patches of 2, 3, 4 months within seasons where he hasn't been quite as good. And like I always think back to the nearly quadruple season where first 6 months of that year, for me, he's the best player in the world at the time. And then towards the end of that season, he actually doesn't do quite the numbers that you expect, and he does tail off a bit. It happens in another season as well. I can't remember exactly what.
No, I always talk about one of my favourite ever Liverpool goals, possibly my favourite ever Salah goal, was the one at Southampton when he takes his top off. We go 2-1 up in the game. Massive, you know, feels like a massive step forwards towards winning the league. That's end of March, start of April. He hasn't scored since February.
Well, yeah.
And part of why he takes his top off isn't just, it's like, I fucking got one. If you know what I mean? Like, there's an element of that. And when he's running through, everyone's thinking, give it to Firmino, give it to Firmino, give it to Firmino, because he hasn't scored for 2 months.
But this is part of a point as well, because that season he scores 19 goals, which I think is his lowest return out of any of his 9 seasons at Liverpool. Probably not hit 19 this season. I'm not sure exactly where he is right now. But the point is, that season I mentioned, we nearly win the quadruple. That season, we nearly win the league and we win the Champions League.
That's 7 points.
Yeah. So in those previous iterations of where Salah had 3 or 4 months of maybe poor form by his standards, the spotlight's not necessarily on him because Liverpool are playing so well, so his poor form isn't contributing to Liverpool doing badly. This feels like one of the first times in his Liverpool career where Salah's been off form and Liverpool have been bang out of form, and therefore all the spotlight's been on him, all the media attention's been on him in a way that it wasn't before because the team were playing well. I don't think that's helped him, and I think that might have got to him a bit, as it would anyone.
Well, I think that's when he does the comments. One of the things he says is Harry Kane goes through a month and everyone is supporting Harry Kane. And he all but said, I've had a difficult year, I've had a difficult month, it's been hard for me. And again, the backdrop of this is we get to see post-Bournemouth first game of the season, Jota, that is always there for all of these players. You feel as though it has maybe made them feel more tender, and I don't mean that in a way to be rude to them, maybe more tender to certain things around their own lives. But yeah, he cites that, and you're absolutely spot on to say it is a misnomer to act as though from the point at which he turns up in August 2017 to the last game of last season, every single one of his performances was at least a 7.
No.
There weren't extended patches of no goals. I think it is really important to remember that. Like, one of the things about last season, was it felt like Slot got Salah to a level that we hadn't particularly seen for a period, whilst he's still been really good. So I think it is important to say that, and also it's like, I do think, and in general, letting him be a bit more human, I think it's a good thing. He doesn't have to be the superhuman Mo Salah.
Well, and that's the thing as well, because all the journalism around the interview, and not to go back to the interview because we've done that and you've done an entire podcast on that, but there were people saying that he's come out and this is a calculated thing about a move to Saudi in January or a move to Saudi in the summer. It wasn't. But from what everyone has said, it was just like a bit of a head loss. His head went. He was emotional about how he was playing himself. He probably wasn't getting the best out of himself. He was emotional at then that being sort of exacerbated by the fact that he's on the bench 3 times in a row, albeit that was only the first time I think he was on the bench. Was that? No, sorry, that was the third game he was on the bench. So it was just an emotional reaction. And how many times have we gone into work or gone back home and been emotional and said the wrong thing or done the wrong thing, and you wake up the next morning, you're like, oh God.
None of that this week though, lads, of course.
I was actually in this morning, but that's a separate conversation.
In set days, is it now?
Paul, you've been dying to talk about the future, so let's do it. There was a point where I think we all thought that, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think a lot of us thought that was it because of Mo's comments, really. I sort of wondered now whether he does definitely leave in the summer, whether that's as cut and dry as we think it is, really, whether there's like even if there's just a period over the next few months where almost Slot and the management are looking at him and going, we each want to know that you've got it for this last year now, and if you want to stay to end your contract, absolutely feel free.
Yeah. Andy mentioned before the Brighton game before he went off to the AFCON, and I remember obviously we'd won and they were doing the lap of honour, and I remember standing on the ground looking at Mo. I'd forgot about Virgil. He comes to the Anfield Wrap where I am, and I was just looking at Mo, and he was clapping, and I was looking at him thinking, this cannot be the last time I am clapping you, and I was genuinely terrified, and I can say that and people can laugh, but I was like, I just want him to be, I'm giving you a clap because I'm off to the AFCON and I'll be back in a month. And I really wanted to be that. And I'm so glad it has been that. And then again, like, you've asked the future. I don't think anyone sitting around this table can definitively say this is going to happen. And everyone's probably got our own opinions on it. I agree with you. I think the thing the club should do, I think they should go, right, what do you want to do, Mo? I think because he deserves that. And I think if they said, are you happy to play or give us your last year, finish your contract and then go, I think they should do that. However, whether that is what they want to do, whether they're thinking, can we get X amount of money for them from this league or whatever. One thing I do know is that if that is the case and it is, the end of Mo, then, what he deserves, he should definitely get. And I think everyone around this table and every Liverpool fan, would be the send off that, the whole ground should be literally a shrine to Salah, and every single person in there should be grateful that for the last, nearly 10 years of our lives, we've had this lad. And I think the biggest thing, I was speaking to my little boy before we were having lunch, talking about coming on the show. I said, we're speaking about Mo Salah. And I said, on my phone, these memories pop up. It was a video of my little boy, and he was 2, and he was doing a Peter Rabbit Mo Salah mashup. I'll show you that after the show.
I'll tell you what.
Honestly.
But the buzzword.
When it came up, I watched it and I laughed, and then a little bit of me, I had to have a word with myself. One, I was looking at my little lad when he was 2, but for him and his whole life, Mo Salah has been this god almost. And even now, he's 10, and he's had that whole period of Mo being here and him being a massive part of Liverpool's success. But obviously, as we spoke about earlier, that we're being hand in hand. So if it does get to that point, I think every one of us should give him the send off if that is the case.
I think it's tricky, Neil, isn't it? Because if there's money on the table, especially if it's the sort of Saudi kind of money, then people are going to say we should take it with respect to strengthening the squad. I kind of wonder if, from loads of senses, really the Saudi thing is quite as cut and dry as people make it out.
I always say there's complexities in that region. It's not as straightforward as everyone acts. That region's a big region, and the idea that there's geopolitical stuff at play with Salah, because that's literally the person he's become, and that's again another reason I think at times maybe to cut him a bit of slack. Like, he signed up to be a footballer. He wanted to be the greatest footballer he could be. I think it's fair to say he's achieved that. But I don't think he's ever necessarily signed up to be a key figure in geopolitical conversations. That's not, and that's unfair. There's great players who play for all sorts of nations, and some do end up thrust into that position. Some claim that position, some end up thrust into that position. But it does feel a little bit like Salah's had no choice in this matter, and I think it's worthy of respect in that. I think it's hard. I think that the question is, for me, listen, from Liverpool's point of view, it's not just does he get another year. It's he will have another. If he does another year, he will be Liverpool's highest paid player. And I think it's firstly worth saying that Liverpool gave him that contract, offered him that contract. So Liverpool have got to live the consequences of that. That's now the one they've got to accept if he chooses to stay, and if there isn't an offer that Liverpool want to accept. But I think there's a little thing of, and I think this goes a bit for Van Dijk. I think Van Dijk may be 1 year removed because of the position more than the profile or the age. But I think that next season Van Dijk is just going to need a bit of managing. And I think that next season, Salah's going to need a bit of managing +1. Because when you are right wing, when you are asked to sprint, when it is a matter of you've got your left back stood up now, we've isolated him, you've got to go at him, because what's the point? The game is there. Part of how we set up is we will get that lad one-on-one. We create you the space, you've got to go at him. Whereas with centre-back, the way you play the position, it's part of a unit. And that you can manage through that, and you shouldn't be exposed. You can read the game differently. I think he needs managing. So what I mean by that is there therefore needs to be a lad who is also playing that spot. And how everyone takes that, you can't bring a lad in to play that spot and say, listen, you're only going to play when Salah's off. That's not, it's got to be the idea of there's a competition. And how everyone takes that, I think that's the conversation to have with Mo. How would you feel if we brought someone in who we think in 12 months' time will be good enough to start for a Liverpool that can win the Champions League? So therefore, he's good enough to start for a Liverpool now. Sorry, that's just the way it is. In the same way that remains the question to take the other end of the scale around someone like Ingemoa, where, if Ingemoa is going to be one of Liverpool's genuine squad options next season, forget this. But what we mean by that is, well, if Cody Gakpo, for instance, is your starting left-sided player and there's a Champions League final tomorrow, would we feel confident playing Rio Ingemoa in that position? If we wouldn't, and the current trajectory is that feels like a big ask. That's what I mean. You're not talking here about an 18-year-old backing Salah up. You're talking about someone who's 21, 22, who will be within his rights to knock on the manager's door if Salah goes 3 games without a goal and say, can I have his shirt, please? Because I'm going to score. Someone who's effectively like Mo Salah was. Yeah. That's what you want. That's the way you want that. You want that character. So I think it's hard. I think you don't know whether or not a big offer comes in. I don't think we're going to get the send-off that you want, because I don't think we're going to have clarity by the last game.
Even if it, so you think it won't be resolved in terms of we won't know whether he's leaving or not? Yeah. Right, okay.
I don't think you're going to get it. I think we're going to have to make our own. And just because I don't think that Liverpool, no one's going to want to play the hands, all that sort of stuff. I don't think it'll be announced next season, Salah is Liverpool. Right, okay. I could be wrong, but I don't quite see how the chain of events comes for that. Yeah. So, I think we're going to have to sort of accept that. And that, by the way, that used to be the case. Players just used to leave.
Of course, yeah.
And some would even leave in September and October, so you had to bear that in mind. But I think that there is an argument in all directions, but a lot of it comes down to what he wants. I think that is the important part, in that, if he won't be comfortable with, you will be one of the squad options, you may well still get on if Liverpool make a Champions League final. You may start it, you may get on, but we can't say with absolute certainty, like we would have done in 24-25, Liverpool make a Champions League final, you are playing every minute. That's not the universe that we're in anymore. And if he would find that exceptionally difficult, and we don't know, because I'll go back to it, I think he is a Liverpool player, and what I mean by that is, I think Lucas Leiva is a Liverpool player. I think there are players who, partially through longevity, some occasionally, like Nigel Spackman, weirdly is a Liverpool player, some through having been around at big moments and big times, players end up being defined by playing for Liverpool. Well, Salah's got all the above. Massive moments, huge historic things that have happened, growth of the club, longevity, where he is on the records list. He is a Liverpool player. This is his club, and that happens. It's as much his club as it's Steven Gerrard's. in the same way that it's not Luis Suarez's, because Barcelona's Luis Suarez's club. That's where he went and made himself. As much as we love Louis, we've got to accept and some people will be delighted about that, but we've got to accept that that's not the case. You can have a long chat about Xabi Alonso in this context. It's not Javier Mascherano's club, but it is Lucas Leiva's. And that's not to say Lucas Leiva was better than them. I don't think that. This is his club. So if he wants to do a year where he says, you know what, I see the role as being, I'm here, and if there's a lad who you bring in and by next March he's better than me, I'll be happy to sit on the bench and come off the bench and do bits. And maybe, just maybe, that involves getting the winner in a big game. I'm made up with that when I've come off the bench. Maybe it means taking a penalty in a shootout because I've come on 60 and I'm there to play the last hour. If that's the case, then I think you have that conversation. If that's what comes out of it in a mature sense, then we all go, great, we move forward. If what comes out of it is, to be honest, I think I've got 3 more years of football at any level I can get to, and I want to play every minute and I want to be really, really important, then it might be, but then we probably need you to go somewhere else for that at this stage. And he might not like that. He might not believe that. The personality that he is suggests that he might not believe that because he wants to be the man. And part of, you don't get to have the man who's been the man and then be really angry when he still wants to be the man. You can't have that, and you can't have it always. You just can't. So you've got to accept the rough with the smooth. And I'll say again, Liverpool didn't have to offer him a contract. They did. I'm glad they did. I'd have hated to have lost him at the end of last season. Maybe now some people might say in hindsight that might have been the right thing to do, but that doesn't live the universe that we all would have gone through last summer in amongst all of that. So I think it's complicated. I think it's hard. I just want to feel as though everyone's going to act in the best possible faith and just be dead honest. I think they'll need to be all dead honest with each other for it to work.
Yeah, I think, Andy, this is where it gets kind of tricky, I guess, is players being sold over players leaving on a free. Is that if he was to leave on a free and we all knew it was coming, we would get that send-off. And it's funny, really, because like Neil says, loads of players do just leave. I think we've been fairly lucky in recent years with a lot of Liverpool's sort of ageing squad players that we've got to see them leave on a free and got to have that send-off. And Mo Salah, that Liverpool doing this, Liverpool's greatest vote on their website at the moment, there's a chance that when all is said and done in that, he could be up there as the greatest of all time.
I think so. The word greatest is really odd in sport, I feel, because
it would literally be by public vote as opposed to like...
And I'm all right with that. I'm more just thinking, the word great in any other context is clearly defined. If I ask one of my classes which number is greater, 12 or 8, hopefully they would all say 12. Or if I ask you who's done the greatest amount of work in the office today, well, you go up and check who's done literally the most amount of work. Whereas with football, quality comes into it, but longevity comes into it, and trophies come into it. And, for example, you mentioned Suarez there. For me, from what I've seen in my lifetime, Suarez is the best player I've ever seen play for Liverpool in terms of raw quality, and you can debate that. But for me, that's what he is. But the way we've defined greatness, he's not even in the top 200, probably. I mean, he's there 3 years. He tries to get off immediately after the second year, does get off after the third year, wins 1 League Cup. I mean, he's nowhere near the level of greatness, certainly of a Salah, or even like the likes of Henderson and Milner. For me, I just think in terms of the way we've defined it, and from the 60s when Liverpool, obviously Bill Shankly brings him up from the second division, and there's an era change there where Liverpool go from second division to competing for leagues and obviously winning the FA Cup, and later on into the 70s and 80s winning European Cups, and then there's obviously a slump in the 90s and then sort of back up through a few trophies in the 2000s and back to now. But there's not been that many positive era changes, because eras last sort of 10, 15 years, and the era of Liverpool going from finishing 6th, 7th, 8th every year to then getting themselves back in the Champions League consistently, to then get themselves back into Premier League contention, Champions League contention. There are a few players for me who represent that mindset shift and quality shift, and it's Virgil, it's Alisson, and it's Mo Salah. And Mo Salah has quite literally scored by a distance the most number of goals, or the greatest number of goals throughout that period. So you can talk about quality of player, you can talk about longevity and time they've been there, but for me, he's a player who transformed us from being happy to get in the Champions League, which I was for a period of time, to literally giving us the best day of our lives, and the best days of our lives, obviously Champions League and Premier League wins. So I haven't thought about who I'm going to vote for yet. I'm going to sit.
You don't have to rank them, thankfully. You pick 25.
I'm going to take it very seriously. But if he's not right at number 1 spot for me, he'll certainly be in the top 5. But he should, if anyone puts him as their greatest ever Liverpool player, I don't think there can be any qualms about that.
I think the most important, firstly, we've got to trust that the people who run Liverpool are going to act in Liverpool's interests, and we've got to therefore, if there is a bit of grumpiness somewhere, even in amongst ourselves, our emotional reactions that you're talking about, the very fact that you do see him synonymous. I always hark back to, there was a Standard Chartered thing where he went to where kids were playing, like that. There was 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, and they all treat him like he's Mickey Mouse. They all treat him like this wonderful cartoon figure has landed, and they all just want to hug him. They all just want to hug him for a minute. Yeah. That's the way kids respond to him. I think it's in part because of his face and because of the way he played.
Yeah.
Plays as well, but plays, that sort of, I've always said he's a footballer Nan's like. He makes tons of sense if you're a Nan. He gets the ball there and he tries to put it in that straight away. That makes tons of sense. Yep. Don't care about 4-2-3-1. Nope. Nan's care about the ball going in the goal as quickly as possible. And that's what Mo Salah does, or did, and now it is a bit more complicated for him. But I think that we need to, there will be the emotion. I think we'll need to be accepting that the people who are running Liverpool are running Liverpool and Liverpool's interests, and there's stuff that they've done recently that I don't like and I disagree with, but I do feel a little bit like if Liverpool get through this season relatively unscathed, then it actually becomes almost in a way a bit of an inoculation moving forward. I think it's a bit of tearing the plaster off, and if that then also involved Salah moving on, for instance, at the end of this one, then I can see a world where Liverpool are in the short to medium term better for it, and I think you've got to believe there's good reason. Back to the idea of, I don't like the decisions that were made back in the summer, but I also simultaneously have to acknowledge I don't think they bought a bad player. I think every single one they bought are really good. So we can be mature about this and say, well, you're not entirely sure about this bit of direction or that bit of direction. But we need the people who run Liverpool to act first and foremost in Liverpool's interests, not sadly in the interests of the memories that pop up on Jacko's screen as and when it. So I think that's important, and I think it's important to have that at the forefront of all of our minds, because that's what it comes down to. I am, you started off talking about it. I love Mo Salah. I think he's my favourite ever player. And I think I will, watch Liverpool. I'm mid-40s now, so let's just be generous around my life expectancy and say I've got 30 years more, but I've had 30 years of being sufficiently adult to be able to say who's your favourite ever Liverpool player, and my answer is Mo Salah. In terms of the ones that I've genuinely got to watch, throw it back 30 years, it's 1996, throw it forward 30 years to 2056. There's a chance you ask me in 2056 who's your favourite Liverpool player, Mo Salah. But I want Liverpool to win loads of trophies between now and then. I want Liverpool to win the league next year, to win the European Cup this year, to win. So we've got to trust that the people who do that, that's what they've got to have at the forefront of their mind. I support Liverpool, not Mo Salah, even though he is my favourite ever footballer, my favourite ever Liverpool player. So what we need is Liverpool, the best, whatever the best thing is for Liverpool. And if that is that he does go and that we don't get a big day, well, there'll be other opportunities. There'll be times when he's coming back. There'll be moments. There'll be something. There'll be a charity game. There'll be, do you know what I mean? There'll be that will happen. But also, it happened at City away. It happened at Southampton away. It happened 21-22 when he was crying, but we were singing his name. It happened after we won the league. It's happened. That's the bit. That's the transactional bit that really, really matters. It happens at the weekends. It happens against Sunderland. It happens when he scores the penalty and he turns around and he touches and the cop acknowledges. It's happening. It's happening. And the one thing I think he knows is, the mad journey of his own life, where he's ended up being adored in person by all of these people in the northwest of England. That's what a mad thing for him to have had. But that transcends globally, that the world of Liverpool supporters loves him and has loved him and will always love him because of what Andy says in terms of what he gave us.
Yeah, we all love Mo Salah. We all love Aura Frames. That's been your tour Unwrapped.